Hello, everyone. Welcome to Awaken Your Freedom Show. Please subscribe to support our growing community. It really helps. Okay, so today we are strapping in and blasting off.
Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Of course, we're taking a serious deep dive into Think Like a Rocket Scientist by Ozan Varol.
And honestly, this is one of those deep dives that I think is going to fundamentally change how you look at your own problems.
It really seems like it.
It's just a fascinating piece of work.
Yeah.
It takes something that seems so out of reach, rocket science, and makes it a practical manual for daily life.
Absolutely. But let's address the rocket in the room, so to speak.
Right.
When you hear rocket scientist, you immediately think of like these Einstein-level geniuses.
Totally. People with brains the size of a planet.
Yeah, scribbling equations that look like hieroglyphics. And your first reaction is, well, that's great for them, but I'm just trying to figure out my life.
I'm not calculating escape velocity here. Yeah, we put them on this pedestal.
We do.
We assume their success is just raw intelligence, some gift the rest of us just don't have.
But Varol, and by the way, he is an actual rocket scientist who became a law professor, which is a whole other conversation.
What a pivot.
He argues that's not it at all. It's not about being a genius. It's about a specific thought process.
Exactly. It's a framework. It's a way of approaching uncertainty. And that's what's so great. It's a framework that anyone can use.
So the goal today isn't to teach everyone physics.
No, not at all. It's to show you how to break free from conventional thinking, to stop operating within what he calls inherited limits.
I love that phrase, inherited limits. It sounds like bad furniture you got from a relative.
It kind of is. It's mental clutter you just accept because it's always been there.
So let's start unpacking this. The foundation of it all is first principles thinking. Now, you hear this term a lot, especially in like the tech world. But what does it actually mean for a normal person?
So thinking from first principles is basically boiling a problem down to its most fundamental truths, its raw materials, and then building it back up from there.
Instead of just asking, how has this always been done?
Precisamente. That's the trap most people fall into. We look at a problem, and our first instinct is to look at what everyone else is doing.
What's the industry standard, right?
Right. That's reasoning by analogy. And we'll get to why that's so dangerous. First principles asks a different question. It asks, what must be true for this to work? It ignores the history and just looks at the physics of the problem.
The classic example of this is, of course, Elon Musk and SpaceX.
It's the textbook case. And I think people gloss over this because they just think, oh, Musk is rich, but they miss the actual thought process.
Right. So the story goes, when he first wanted to go to Mars, he did what any rich guy would do. He went shopping.
To the Russians to buy old missiles?
He just wanted to buy the finished product. And the price was, well, astronomical.
Pun intended, yeah. Everyone told him, rockets are expensive. That's just a fact.
That was the inherited limit. The assumption was that only governments can afford to go to space.
But Musk didn't accept that. He used first principles. He stopped looking at the rocket and started looking at what a rocket is made of.
This is the part I love. He literally broke it down.
He did. He asked, okay, what's in a rocket? It's aluminum, titanium, copper, carbon fiber, and fuel. Then he went to the commodity markets.
Just looked up the price per kilogram for all that stuff.
And what he found was just shocking. The cost of all the raw materials was about 2% of the typical price of a rocket.
Wait, hold on. 2%. So 98% of the cost was just, what, fluff?
Inefficiency, bloated supply chains, old ways of doing things, and just a total lack of competition. The high cost wasn't a law of physics. It was a habit.
So by stripping away that one assumption, he could build his own for a fraction of the cost.
Exactly. He rebuilt from scratch. And that's the key takeaway for anyone listening. Most limits in life aren't real. They're inherited.
So you have to question the recipe.
You have to.
I love that. But it brings us to the flip side of this. If first principles is the hero, then the villain is reasoning by analogy.
Yes. And this is the default mode for almost all of us. And it's really dangerous.
Which is funny because analogies help us learn, right? We say, oh, it's like Uber, but for dog walking.
It's a mental shortcut. And shortcuts are fine for, making breakfast. But when you're trying to innovate, shortcuts are terrible. Reasoning by analogy is just copy-pasting what worked for someone else.
But isn't that just best practices? If I want to open a coffee shop, shouldn't I just look at Starbucks?
You can if you want to be a worse version of Starbucks. The world just changes too fast for that. The context is never the same.
Varol uses the Blockbuster versus Netflix example for this.
The classic.
I know, everyone's heard it. But he frames it differently. He doesn't just say Blockbuster was stupid.
Right. He explains why smart people made that decision. And the mistake was their analogy. They treated their business like a retail model.
They thought they were a store like Walmart or Gap.
Exactly. We are a store that rents tapes. We make money on late fees and candy. They were optimizing for that model.
And they were the best at being a video store.
The best, and that was the problem. Netflix didn't think like a video store. They thought like a technology company.
They were asking a different question.
A totally different question.
Yeah.
They asked, how can we deliver entertainment most efficiently with the technology we have right now?
And Blockbuster was so stuck in their we are a store analogy that they couldn't see the shift.
They were trapped. To survive, you can't just look at the competition. You have to look at what the technology makes possible.
Okay, so stop looking sideways and start looking forward, which is a perfect segue to maybe the most exciting part of this, moonshot thinking.
This is where it gets really fun.
It starts with JFK, right? In 1962, he stands up and says, we're putting a man on the moon in this decade.
And the craziest part is, they had no idea how to do it.
None. The metals they needed hadn't been invented yet. The navigation systems didn't exist.
There was no roadmap. But that's the point of a moonshot. The goal itself forces the invention.
That's what gets me. We usually want to see the path before we set the goal.
Right. We say, I'll aim for X because I know how to get there. A moonshot says, set the goal at Z and we'll invent the path.
It's about the size of the goal. Verrall makes this great distinction between 5% and 500% growth.
Walk us through that.
If you aim for 5% growth, you just tweak your tactics. You work a little harder, maybe skip a latte, you stay in your comfort zone.
You're doing the same thing, just a bit more intensely.
Exactly. But if you aim for 500% growth or 1,000%, you can't just work harder. The old methods literally break.
They don't work anymore. You're forced to throw out the whole playbook.
So the impossible goal is actually useful.
It's transformative. It changes your identity. You stop asking, how do I improve this? And start asking, how do I completely reinvent this?
It rewires your brain. But, and this is the big but,
The fear.
the terror. If I aim for the moon and I miss, I crash and burn. It feels way safer to aim low.
And that brings us to the next core idea, which is you have to embrace intelligent failure.
Intelligent failure. I like the sound of that. Sounds much better than just, face planting.
It is. Look, failure is part of the process. In rocket science, it's not the opposite of success. It's the engine of success.
Back to SpaceX. They have those famous videos of their rockets just exploding on the launch pad.
Yeah, the blooper reels. Most companies would bury that footage.
Oh, for sure.
But for them, it wasn't a disaster. It was data. Every single crash told them something new about aerodynamics or fuel pressure.
So the key is redefining what the crash even means. But how do you do that emotionally? When I fail, it feels like I'm a failure.
That's the hardest part. And Verrall's insight here is that failure only destroys you if you attach your ego to it.
There's that ego again.
Always. You have to detach. A rocket exploding doesn't mean the scientists are stupid. It means the hypothesis was wrong.
Okay, so for the listener who isn't blowing up rockets, how do we apply this? If my business fails, I lose my savings. That's real.
Totally. And that's why you don't bet the whole farm on day one. You apply it by using the next principle. Test like a scientist. Meaning, stop living in your head and start experimenting. Most of us rely on opinions. I think this is a good idea.
Right. I think people will buy this.
But a scientist doesn't rely on opinions. They test hypotheses.
So instead of spending 2 years on a business plan in your basement,
You test a tiny version. You want to start a business, sell one thing to one person. You want to grow an audience. Post for a month and measure the data. Don't just guess.
confidence isn't built by thinking, it's built by testing.
That's it exactly. Small experiments reduce the fear because the stakes are so low. If it fails, you just got some data.
I love that. It takes all the pressure off. You're not launching your destiny, you're just running a test.
Let's see what happens. It's an incredibly powerful phrase.
Okay, so speaking of tests, there's another danger, isn't there? We've talked about fear and lazy thinking, but what about arrogance? When we're sure we're right, but we're dead wrong.
The cognitive blindfolds. This is all about bias. Confirmation bias, groupthink.
These are the things that actually crash the rockets?
They do. You look at the Challenger disaster, the warning signs were all there, the data was flashing red, but people ignored it because they wanted the launch to succeed.
They only looked for evidence that supported what they already believed.
So how do you fight that? Because we all have blind spots.
Well, rocket scientists deliberately invite dissent.
They ask people to argue with them. actively. They build a culture where if you don't speak up, you are failing the mission. If everyone in a meeting agrees with you, that's a huge red flag.
That is so counterintuitive.
Right.
If everyone agrees with me, I think I'm a genius.
It feels great, but it's so dangerous. The biggest risk isn't failure, it's believing you can't fail.
Wow. So you have to invite the critics in to stress test your ideas.
You have to. You stress test the rocket before you put a person in it.
Okay, we're coming into the final stretch, but there's one last principle that seems like in total contradiction.
I know which one you mean.
We've been talking about speed, explosions, moonshots, and then he hits us with slow down to speed up.
It sounds like a paradox, I know. We see the launch, which is all fire and speed, but we forget that launch is preceded by years of slow, careful preparation.
In our culture, slow is a bad word. If you're not hustling, you're losing.
And that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Because speed without direction is just chaos. You're just getting lost faster.
Don't get lost faster. I like that.
Verrill's point is that precision creates velocity. You think deeply, you calculate the trajectory, and then you act boldly.
It's the difference between being busy and being effective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you rush the calculation, you miss the moon by 1,000,000 miles. That slow period of aiming is what lets you go so fast later.
So let's bring this all home. What's the final takeaway for the person listening right now?
The synthesis is this. The biggest breakthroughs you're going to have won't come from working harder at the same old stuff. They come from thinking differently, from questioning your inherited assumptions, aiming for something that scares you, and treating your life like a lab.
It's about designing your own orbit.
Designing your own orbit. Stop flying the flight path someone else programmed for you.
Fantastic. So let's give our listeners a mission, an action plan.
Okay, here is your challenge for you today.
Yeah.
Take one area of your life, a project, a goal, anything,
Got it.
and ask 3 questions. First, what assumptions am I blindly accepting here? Identify the invisible walls.
Okay, question the wall.
Second, what would a bold moonshot look like? Not 5% better. What would a complete transformation look like?
Scare yourself a little bit.
And third, what is one small experiment I can run this week? Not a giant leap, just one tiny test to get some data.
Run the test, get the data, ditch the ego.
Because giant leaps are never accidents. They are engineered.
Right.
And you are the engineer.
What a way to end it. This has been an absolute blast.
Me too. It's always a good day when you get to learn from a rocket scientist without doing the math.
Indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We hope you found some fuel for your own journey. To close, please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite platform, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Spotify to stay sharp and never miss a drop of knowledge that could change your financial life. Thank you.